There is a grim, almost unthinkable reality in the National Football League. It's a reality that most franchises will do absolutely anything to run away from. They'll hide behind these massive blockbuster trades, they'll make desperate, splashy free agent signings, constantly trying to convince their fan bases, and honestly themselves, that they are just one piece away, just one more guy. But look, eventually, the bill always comes due. The cap space dries up, the aging core breaks down. So, what actually happens when an organization stops lying to itself? What happens when a team decides to tear a roster down to its absolute bare bones core, stripping away the superstars, shedding those massive suffocating contracts, and just completely destroying the illusions of contention, leaving literally nothing but ashes behind?
Everything changed in a matter of seconds. I want you to just pause for a second and think about that. Think about the sheer, agonizing tension inside the building when a front office looks at a roster they've spent years, maybe a decade building, and suddenly realizes the championship window hasn't just gracefully closed, it has slammed violently shut. This is the precise, painful moment a team stops pretending they're contenders and fully embraces the excruciating pain of a total teardown. Because this isn't just about losing a few games for a season or two. No, it's about erasing a team's entire identity and starting completely from zero.
Welcome to NFL Nexus. We don't just skim the daily headlines here, we dissect the game down to its very marrow. So if you are a diehard analyst of the sport, you are in the exact right place. I need you to subscribe to the channel right now, like this explainer, drop a comment below with your raw thoughts as we go through this. And look, if you want to truly support the deep dive, uncompromising content we're building here, support the channel by becoming a member today. All right, let's get into it. Section 1, the ultimate roster reset. So we are looking at the stark, unfiltered reality of the Miami Dolphins' 2026 offseason. The era of quick fixes is violently, definitively over. For years, right, this was a franchise that tried to paper over its foundational weaknesses with flashy, high-priced acquisitions. But when you look at this quote, you start to notice the sheer magnitude of the philosophical shift that followed. They drafted like an organization accepting that the squad needed to be rebuilt from the middle out. That is a heavy statement. This wasn't some minor retooling. It was a terrifying realization that the core of the team was entirely hollow. The massive, undeniable void left by the monumental release of Tyreek Hill sent absolute shockwaves through the entire league. And it wasn't just losing a generational playmaker. It signaled the arrival of a new, ruthless philosophy. A philosophy that prioritizes structural integrity over pure, flashy stardom. 13. Seriously, let that number really sink in for a second. 13 rookies drafted in a single class. This dramatically reveals the sheer unprecedented magnitude of this overhaul. I mean, it is the second largest draft class in the entire storied history of the Miami Dolphins franchise. You simply do not draft 13 players if you believe you are one pass rusher or one solid receiver away from holding up a Lombardi trophy. You draft 13 players when you desperately need to inject a massive, overwhelming volume of youth, hunger, and, let's be honest, cheap contracts into a locker room that had grown stagnant and bloated. This isn't just a draft class. It is a hostile takeover by an entirely new generation of players. Section 2. Sullivan's Blue-Collar Blueprint. Okay, so let's see how this actually builds out across the personnel. General Manager John Eric Sullivan and head coach Jeff Hafley have arrived in Miami with this incredibly methodical, unglamorous blueprint. There is absolutely nothing flashy about what they are doing here. Sullivan and Hafley, they aren't looking for saviors. They are looking for soldiers. They want to create affordable depth and fierce, uncompromising competition at literally every single level. You start right in the trenches with Caden Proctor. You are drafting pure, unadulterated road grading size on the offensive line to brutally dictate the point of attack. Then you look to the back end with Chris Johnson, injecting this raw, explosive, sideline-to-sideline athleticism into a secondary that desperately needed range. They drafted Jacob Rodriguez at linebacker to completely command the middle of the field. They grabbed 2 wide receivers in the 3rd round to build up a stable of cost-effective weapons, and then they just methodically layered extra depth at safety, guard, and tight end. What they're doing is insulating the roster. They're ensuring that when the inevitable physical toll of a brutal NFL season hits, the drop-off to the backup isn't a cliff. Section 3, the draft room steal. But here's the thing. Within this incredibly methodical, blue-collar approach, there is always room for a miracle. I want you to shift the scene in your mind to the unbearable tension of the NFL draft room. The first round is completely in the books. The board is shifting. The clock is relentlessly ticking in the 2nd round. And suddenly, an opportunity presents itself that literally nobody in the front office saw coming. 43rd overall. Emphasize that exact draft position. As the picks ticked away, the buzzing electricity in the Miami front office reached an absolute fever pitch. You've got assistant general managers pacing the floor. They're watching their coveted target, A player they had explicitly stamped with a premium first-round grade inexplicably tumbled down the board. Pick 40 goes by, pick 41, pick 42, and then right there, at 43, they absolutely pulled the trigger.
It is honestly fascinating to see head coach Jeff Hafley's reaction to this. He was unable to hide his utter disbelief when he appeared on the Richard Sherman podcast. He spoke with absolute awe and conviction about this exact moment. "I thought he would have been gone," Hafley said. And look at the specific traits he lists here. Just his college tape, the upside, the potential, the leadership capability, the playmaking ability. Hafley is meticulously dissecting every single variable that makes a linebacker elite in the modern NFL, and he is realizing that Jacoby Rodriguez possessed every single one of them. It wasn't just a solid second-round selection. It felt like an undeniable, franchise-altering steal falling right into their laps at pick 43.
So, we really have to understand exactly who Jacob Rodriguez is, right? We need to dive deeply into his bloodline and his football legacy. He shares a school with current NFL star Jordan Brooks, sure, but it goes so much deeper than just an alma mater. Rodriguez has been personally mentored by Miami Dolphins legendary Hall of Famer Zach Thomas. Think about the stunning cinematic parallel there. The greatest linebacker in franchise history, a man who violently defined the middle of the field for an entire generation of football, is directly pouring his knowledge, his processing speed, and his absolute ferocity into the rookie who is now tasked with rebuilding this exact defense. It is incredibly poetic, but man, it comes with immense, crushing pressure for a young player to carry on his shoulders.
Section 4, Linebacker Training Camp Wars.
But I have to warn you right now, that draft day joy, the high fives in the war room, all the hype from the national media, all of that instantly evaporates. It dies the exact second these players step onto the searing practice grass in late July. The brutal, impending reality of training camp battles is waiting, and no starting job in the NFL is ever handed out based on a feel-good draft storyline. We are looking at an impending bloodbath for the starting linebacker job. On one side, you have the highly touted rookie Jacob Rodriguez and the extremely hungry fourth-rounder Kyle Lewis. They represent the future, the youth, and the front office's shiny new vision. But on the exact opposite side, you have the established veterans, Tyrell Dodson and Willie Gay Jr. Look, these are proud, grown men fighting for their professional lives, desperate to prove they aren't obsolete, fiercely fending off cheaper, younger replacements trying to take their food. This isn't just practice, it is a daily, physical war for livelihood, and whoever comes out on top will undeniably set the tone for the entire team.
Section 5, the unforgiving 2026 Gauntlet. Now, we absolutely must pivot from these intense internal roster wars to the external nightmare waiting for these 13 rookies. Because honestly, it simply doesn't matter who wins the starting jobs if they aren't prepared for the monsters waiting outside the building. Warren Sharp's metrics visualize a terrifying reality for this team. Their Arizona Cardinals sit at number 1 in strength of schedule, but lingering right there in the number 2 spot, the Miami Dolphins. The NFL schedule makers have handed this rebuilding franchise a slate of games that looks entirely designed to just break them in half. They are stepping into the second hardest slate of games in the entire National Football League. You are taking a roster stripped entirely to its studs, filled with 13 wide-eyed rookies, and you are throwing them into the absolute deep end against the most lethal established teams on the planet. I want to let the sheer oppressive weight of this statistic just hang in the air for a second. Over 15% of their total regular season schedule will be played against the 2 teams that fought in the AFC Championship game. Think about that. 3 total games against the absolute undisputed pinnacle of the conference. This forces you to truly comprehend the insurmountable odds this completely unproven roster faces. The physical and mental toll of playing back-to-back elite heavyweight opponents is just staggering. There is no ramp-up period here. There is no grace period for a young secondary to figure out NFL coverages. They have to grow up immediately. Section 6, Surviving the NFL Crucible. We need to detail the absolute monsters waiting in the dark for this rebuilding franchise, game after game, week after grueling week. Let's break down this elite tier of the AFC that is waiting to feast. First up, you've got the reigning AFC champion, New England Patriots. You're facing a lethal combination of a brilliant, incredibly physical head coach in Mike Vrabel, paired with an elite, game-breaking quarterback in Drake May. Then you have to pack up and travel to face the Denver Broncos. This is a monstrous 14-win super team from a season ago, and guess who is waiting for them on the perimeter? Former Dolphin Jalen Waddle. The emotional and physical toll of facing a 14-win roster, boasting your former star receiver,
a receiver who knows your building and your tendencies intimately, is a daunting, honestly terrifying reality for a rookie secondary to deal with.
And guys, the nightmare actually deepens when you trace this timeline of destruction from the previous season. Think about the specific teams that underperformed last year solely because of medical catastrophes. Teams that are artificially deflating the schedule's perceived difficulty right now. Joe Burrow was limited to just 8 starts by severe turf toe. Make no mistake, that is an agonizing injury that completely destroys a quarterback's foundation and ability to drive the football downfield. But he's healthy now, and Miami has to face him. Then look at late 2025. Patrick Mahomes suffers a devastating, catastrophic double ligament tear, an ACL and LCL rupture against the Chargers. He lost his entire season. Now the 2026 season arrives, and these apex predators are returning to the field fully healed, heavily motivated, and looking to aggressively reclaim their thrones. And Miami is standing directly in their path.
9. Out of 14 distinct opponents on the Dolphins' schedule, exactly 9 of them finished with an above .500 record in the previous season. The math is completely overwhelmingly against them. This single statistic ensures that there are absolutely no days off in this grueling 18-week gauntlet. There is no easy Sunday, there's no trap game where you can kind of rest your starters or coast to a win. Every single week requires maximum, flawless execution from a roster that is, quite frankly, still trying to learn each other's names in the huddle.
This isn't over yet. The 2026 season is not just a schedule of football games. It is a brutal, unforgiving crucible. The Miami Dolphins have burned their past to the ground, scattering the ashes of an expensive failed era, and now they are walking directly into the fire. So the question is, will the intense heat of this schedule forge these 13 rookies into a foundation of undeniable steel? Or will it melt them down completely before they even have a chance to begin? That is the ultimate question we will be meticulously tracking all season long. Remember to subscribe to NFL Nexus, like the explainer, drop your raw thoughts in the comments below, and become a member to support the channel. Until next time, keep your eyes on the tape.